You're watching SABC News, and this is a special broadcast of the ANC's 5th National General Council, the closing session. And with that, those words there spoken by the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, bringing to an end an epic political week for the ANC, a week in which the erstwhile sole and long-reigning governing party of the country, now at best the biggest party in a power-sharing coalition, humbled by diminishing returns at the polls. They had over 4 days, over the past 4 days, had opportunity to pause and reflect on what has gone wrong and what has gone right on the other hand, and how exactly to capitalize on what they believe has gone right and improve on that and turn their fortunes around. Delegates from around 1,500 branches came through, and basically between themselves and the other delegates from other structures had the last 4 days to slog it out, to really argue and debate, convince one another on policy positions, as well as what needs to be done for the ANC to reclaim its past glory. It was the 5th National General Council of the ANC. There were many moments that can be said to be political moments, including the speech that was just delivered by the president of the ANC. With me is SABC News political editor Mzwandile Mbeje, as well as SABC special correspondent Sophie. And in the next few minutes, we will be reflecting on what we've just heard and what has transpired in the last few days. Mzwai, you know, an epic week politically, a political moment, and I say that because almost with every gathering of this nature, there's that one political moment that almost defines what has happened in the last few years. And I could quickly run through. 2000, it was talk of a people's revolutionary movement and an agent for change. That's the 2000 National General Council. Then 2005, of course, everyone will remember that. Who can ever forget the internal power balance shifting right before our own eyes. 2010, organizational renewal starts to crop up, etc., etc., if we go along that line. Let me start with you, Sophie. For you, what was the moment? What will define this 2025 National General Council for you?
What was critical for the ANC was to admit that all is not well. And the phrase renewal or perish, that's a summation of what I'm talking about. Because if you don't accept the reality, you will never self-correct, or you will never improve in your weaknesses. So that was very, very critical. Yeah. You will recall towards the elections, the veterans of the ANC who joined in the campaign, it was very late at that moment, were demanding that let's acknowledge our mistakes. Let's go to the people and say, we erred, because they erred in terms of corruption, in terms of ill-discipline, in terms of not responding to the cries of the nation and the citizens. Yeah. And therefore, that acknowledgement was very, very important. And then the question would be, now where to from now? Yeah. They have diagnosed the problem. Now they have recommendations. But now people will be watching whether the implementation will start tomorrow, not in January. And in the next few minutes, we will delve a bit deeper into the president's speech. But I wanted to start with capturing, being the commentators that we are, commentators to history. Mzwai, what for you was the political moment of NGC 2025?
The fact that this NGC was so different. I mean, I know that we had said it's subdued, but actually we may have mischaracterized it. It basically was a bit more focused. I've been to so many of events of this nature. It appeared focused, and in terms of even the decisions and the discussions that were going on, they appeared to exactly pinpoint the issue. But maybe we will have to judge them going forward, because they have, I mean, they are actually good at diagnosing the problem. Yeah. So in fact, for me, perhaps your question should be answered in the future in the sense, will that which they have picked up, diagnosed, spoken about, be corrected? Because even in the past, they've been able to pinpoint some of the issues,
Yeah.
implementation. But of course, when we go to the speech,
Yeah.
one of the key moments of the president's was discipline and implementation has been singled out.
So interestingly, my moment was, I suspect that years from now we'll look back on this NGC as having been historic for the tripartite alliance.
Absolutely.
This was a defining moment for the tripartite alliance as we've known it until this point. It was, for me, a moment of rupture. Let's get into the speech. With that said, that highlight, Mzwai, I see you want to pick up on it.
And I mean, you had somehow restricted us from
Yeah.
going into the speech because that's where the president actually, in not so many words, in the most polite of ways, today, the president made it clear that I know they will not agree with this,
Yeah.
but the marriage is basically in tatters.
Yeah,
The fact that when they walked out of here and start discussing the issue of elections, the members of the SACP will not be allowed.
yeah.
It tells the entire story. Here is my question. Someone like the Premier of Limpopo, who is also the Deputy Chair
Yeah.
of the Communist Party,
Yes.
the Minister of Education, for example. I'm just mentioning some
yes.
of those.
Including the national chairperson
including
of the
the
ANC,
national
Gwede
chairperson.
Those who
Mandela.
serve in dual structures now have a choice to make.
So what are they going to do when the ANC sits to discuss the issue of elections? Will the Minister of Energy, will the Chairperson Gwede Mandela
Yeah.
sit? That is the moment for me.
Oh, Sophie?
I think I agree with Mzwai.
Yeah.
What's going to happen, because the ANC members are also members of the South African
Yes.
Communist Party. Many of them, we know these famous one or the one that are in the leadership position, but even in the branch, an important component of the ANC, the nucleus of the ANC, you have people who are both ANC and SACP. So that decision, it's not going to be felt at national level only or provincial, but even at local branches. So those who are sitting at home watching the president, I'm sure the phones are ringing. Comrades, where to from here? Hey, Maqabane, siyaphi manje? Siqalaphi Maqabane?
Talk to this one. Mzwai says the president was as polite as he possibly could. The sense I got is one of softening the blow, but the blow was landed nonetheless. This
It was
whole
a
cry,
punch.
this whole cry of a reconfiguration of the alliance. Suddenly, we're told we must meet urgently. The alliance leaders must meet urgently with a view to reconfiguring the alliance. That's the softening part. But the blow then comes and says, pending all of that, we are asking those
To
Communist
recuse
Party members who serve in
themselves.
dual structures to recuse themselves.
Exactly. The issue here, whether they do have that emergency meeting of the alliance with the COSATU and perhaps some mediating, the problem is this is the SACP resolution. You can only change a party resolution either with a special Congress convened to look at that or by a full Congress
Yeah.
or conference.
Yeah.
So is there enough time for the SACP, no matter what they agree on during the Alliance Summit, to be able to convene a special general meeting or Congress to reverse this decision or wait for the next Congress? Local government is around the corner. I
Right.
think it's difficult.
I do want us to focus, because it was a wide-ranging speech, the closing speech. It grappled with both internal dynamics, tripartite dynamics, but also elements that have to do with the ANC and government and driving the stately agenda. So as a last shot on the internal dynamics, Mzwai, talk to me about the emphasis that has been placed on the education, political education, organizational renewal. As I say, you started seeing this language of renewal from the 2010 NGC. Was it amplified even better with clearer direction of what does it entail, how exactly it will be implemented?
In fact, perhaps this conference was renewal in action. I'll tell you why. Because we have been saying less chaotic, a bit more organized, and more focused, and perhaps that's part of what we are speaking about as renewal. But as I've said, these things will only be translated going forward. Remember, for an ordinary South African, they will want to see that happening in their own areas. Will the leader of the ANC in a branch, when there is a difficulty in that particular community, will he or she be the one to be there first?
That
to
rootedness.
Show that rootedness.
In communities.
Will that happen?
Yeah.
Will when an old person is struggling there, struggling to get their pension, will they be able to assist to be the ones? That is what you talk about. When you talk renewal, you don't just speak big English. You're speaking about practicalities that impact people directly, specifically people who would be on the poor side of things.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to pause for a moment and go on over to Natasha Phiri, just for her to give us her wrap of from her vantage point, and then we'll come back. In fact, I think we can take one question out, Sophie, before we go to Natasha. Let's talk about the election, what you heard about election preparedness. Did you hear enough there? The whole talk of return to basics, door to door. Don't be high flying with your banners in the sky and
your black
and the
cars
helicopters and
cage,
come back, knock on people's doors, sit down and talk to people.
Well, I think it was clear. The issue is, do you have people who'll be able to look at your election strategy? The ANC election strategy all the time used to change according to the different times. It included the optics, how your president look like in terms of dress code, what he does when he interacts with people, how he talks.
Yeah.
So they have to go back to that. But secondly, he pointed out that previously they used to ensure that they have information. How many people stay here? How many are working? How many are potential voters? And who is going to help us to get them, the whole family? So they have to do that. I don't know whether they have enough time, it's a year on, to put together that kind of an infrastructure. But also, it will be interesting what came out from the battle of ideas. Because they have to be visible. They have to communicate much better and effective. So Kgalema was in that committee, the former deputy president of the party, and the secretary with the experience. Maybe he was able to jack up, while the former president, Thabo, was in the renewal. And when I spoke to two young people from Western Cape, young, they came to me and they said, we were being addressed by former President Thabo Mbeki. No, it was quiet now. We were so quiet. The issue is, are you going to implement what you heard? Let
me pause there, Sophie. When we come back, Mzwai, we'll start with the discussion around the stately elements, what happens in the state, because, as I say, it did serve a dual function, galvanize the forces within the ANC, but also send a clear mandate to those who serve on behalf of the ANC in government. Now, let's talk about grappling with the ANC in government, with that recognition that says we lost power and, we lost significant amount of support, but still responsible for a good chunk of government. Also, what for you were the highlights? I sensed that we started with the theoretical framing of it being the NDR, National Democratic Revolution, but by the end, today, I didn't hear that much peppering of NDR in the president's speech, but when you listen to the contents, the effect is the same.
The effect is the same, particularly on issues of transformation. The NDR is all about transformation, changing the lives and the fortunes of the previously advantaged people and also oppressed. Now, the issue of transformation becomes very critical. Now, you have a situation where members of the GNU don't see eye to eye with those who are pushing for transformation because they want a different approach in terms of redress. Now, he has emphasized that that is not negotiable transformation. Therefore, you are continuously going to have these tensions in the GNU. And he even made it clear that at times there are tensions when it comes to such critical issues, and there's no way the ANC will back off. So it's going to be very, very important for the ANC to find a way to manage those differences within the GNU as it relates to transformation and the issues of the economy, particularly the redress. I mean, there are tendencies we see now of certain groups who are opposed to transformation, very vocal, even having international muscle in terms of lobby. Now, how are you going to deal with that? Because there's a lot of damage that's been done. And
so
therefore, that message is clear. We are not going to be bullied. It was also clear. But the issue is, do you have cadres who will ensure that they run with that message and defend? Because sometimes the sense of incumbency makes people not to focus or make people not to focus on the task at hand.
Mzwai, economic policy. We've made a lot out of the moment of rupture as far as the alliance is concerned. Part of those differences that have led us to this moment have been on the direction in which the ANC has been driving in government as far as economic policy is concerned. But even on that front, there's clearly no backing away. The president talking about the NGC mandating cabinet to come up with a clear investment philosophy, but at the heart of that philosophy, crowding in of private sector involvement, which doesn't land so well with the alliance partners.
Exactly, and also to add to that, coming out very strongly on the issue of the BEE. Noting that the major partner in the GNU, the DA, has even gone as far as putting up boards to say scrap the BEE because it's
a job killer.
It's a job killer. So the ANC will have to then deal with those contradictions as it engages with its partners. So there does appear, by the way, from the delegates, that there was some sort of satisfaction in inverted commas, in how the NEC has handled the issue of the GNU. That's why they came out supporting it to say that was the move, and they keep reminding us it was a technical intervention. But of course, they are not in the interest of the country. So they have not taken their eyes off the prize, which is obviously the future. So those issues would continue to somehow, time and again, bring to test the GNU, because the partners will also have their own. So it's a very interesting contradiction that we are witnessing, but it appears so far so good in terms of taking it forward.
So we're drawing towards a close. We don't have much time to cover the other areas I would have wanted us to touch upon. Local government, just the reforms that are required there, the whole issue around the SETAs, the review of the SETA system. No time for that. Let's look ahead, Sophie. The president of the ANC talking about going forward as far as the local government elections are concerned. The ANC must field its most dedicated, honest, and competent candidates. That's the next test, isn't it? Because that process is always quite tricky for them to handle. The elections are the next milestone and making this a reality.
Well, I think there you have the former Deputy President of the ANC, Kgalema Motlanthe, who is the former Secretary General of the ANC with vast experience in terms of weaknesses as it relates to the candidates. He has come up with strong proposals in terms of what needs to be done to strengthen the process of identifying those who will represent the ANC as the candidates at the local government election.
Yeah.
Now, what is important is that document of Kgalema Motlanthe, the chairperson of the election committee, is quite important. And it is clear, if they can implement all the recommendations there. And yesterday, somebody said to me, Sophie, the way we mean business this time around, whether we become unpopular, we are going to take unpopular decisions.
Even when certain branches are saying, this is the candidate we want, but these people are imposing
that's
a different
what
candidate.
They want to address, that they didn't listen at times to ordinary people when they say, we want this candidate. And therefore, this is something that people will be monitoring, but also issues of skills said. You don't just put people there and then your municipality collapse and then the entire community is not happy.
Mzwai?
It would be very interesting, taking from Sophie's point, how they will navigate that aspect or that area. There will be candidates who may not necessarily be as skilled and qualified, but the community wants them, loves them.
Yes.
How do you deal with that aspect?
That's the test that I'm talking about.
That will be the test that they will have to face.
Yeah. And also just this whole idea of door-to-door, Mzwai, connect that to being rooted in communities. You were talking earlier about they used to be able to know who lives in this household. Is it a child-headed household? Is there an elderly person who needs a wheelchair, etc.? We need you to vote, but perhaps we should be able to come back to you and get you into the systems. Is that what they're talking about?
That's basically talking about being rooted in the communities. I think earlier we touched on a little bit on what an ANC rep ought to do in their own communities. So the door-to-door, you can't simply just go to the neighbors simply because it's elections, and then you find that there's someone, there's a child-headed home who's got no assistance because you've not been there. A door-to-door would mean that if you are an ANC representatives in terms of what they are envisioning, you must be able to know the issues of the community, the water challenges, the electricity challenges. Even when deaths happen, you must be the first to go and come.
By the powers vested upon me as the chairperson of the SABC General Council, I have to end it here because I have to go back to our colleagues in studio, Bongiwe and Thembekile. Bongiwe, Thembekile, so that's it from the side. It's billed as the biggest political school for the ANC, but I can tell you, as you've heard in the last few minutes, it also is a festival of ideas for political animals, such as our politics editor and special correspondent who've been part of this conversation.
And it's going to be an interesting one, Thulasizwe, to see what then happens even of that foundation course that they've been touting. Thembekile, our colleagues there, Thulasizwe, Simelane and Sophie, as well as Mzwandile Mbeje.